Today's lecture will be about the history of evolutionary thought and how we came to the knowledge that we now have today about evolution. Before science was science, most people believed in stasis, which is the idea that things don't change. Aristotle, a famous philosopher, developed the idea of the great chain of being, that all life is linked together as if on a staircase, and at the top of the staircase you have humans, below them you have everything else. And this is a hierarchical chain, so humans being at the top are the best, everything else is not as good. This idea held for many, many years, and eventually became known as the fixity of species, the idea that species don't change. And throughout the Middle Ages, religion really reigned over science. Science was not separate from religion, as shown here by the work of Archbishop Usher, who calculated that the Earth was created in 4004 BC, making it only 6,000 years old. The Earth is over 4.5 billion years old, but at the time, Archbishop Usher's calculation stood. Once we entered the Renaissance, we started to see a shift from stasis towards movement. People like Da Vinci and explorers and Copernicus opened the world's eyes to what was really out there. Copernicus proposed the heliocentric theory, which is the idea that the sun is the center of the universe, not the earth. He was persecuted for this, and it wasn't until the Age of Enlightenment in the 1600s that Galileo provided proof that his theory was correct. Other scientists like Kepler, Descartes, and Newton also made massive contributions that started to get people looking at science as being different from religion. However, nobody was really looking at the natural world as being science. Enter John Ray, the father of biology, who coined the term species as being a group of animals able to reproduce offspring. This is called the biological species concept, and we still use it today. He laid the groundwork for the path to natural selection, which we'll get to in a moment. Carolus Linnaeus, a Swedish naturalist, still believed in the fixity of species, but wanted to develop a classification system for the world around him. He published a book called Systema Natura. In this book, he developed a system for organizing all living things, and he is the father of the science called taxonomy, which is the science of classifying and naming living things. This is an example of the classification of humans. So he developed the system: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Every animal, every organism is given two names. This is called binomial nomenclature. Humans are called Homo sapiens. The genus is always capitalized, the species is always lowercase, and they're both italicized as Latin names. So humans are in the animal kingdom, the chordate phylum, the mammal class, the primate order, the anthropoid suborder, the catarrhine infraorder, the hominoid superfamily, the hominid family, and the genus Homo, species sapiens. We still use this system today, and you're responsible for knowing kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Comte de Buffon was a naturalist and a scientist who also studied the world and gave us the idea of adaptation, the idea that animals or the world could change in order to adjust to different conditions. This is the very beginning steps of getting towards natural selection. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck is to be admired. He was the first scientist to suggest a mode by which this change might occur. He called the change transmutation, which is what we now call evolution. His theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics is unfortunately wrong, but we admire him because he came up with the theory in the first place. His theory of the inheritance of acquired characteristics is based on the idea that as the environment changes, individuals will change their own behavior or anatomical traits in order to adapt to that environment. For example, this dinosaur can no longer reach the leaves. If he stretches really hard, his neck will grow long enough, and then all of his babies will have long necks. This is the same idea as a baby being born with the dead dad's tattoo. Obviously, this isn't true, but it was a good start, and it led the way for other scientists to come in with their theories. Georges Cuvier was another scientist who was trying to figure out how to understand everything in the world that he saw, including things like fossils. how could species go extinct? How could things change? He developed this idea of catastrophism, which is the idea that massive catastrophes, sometimes on a worldwide scale, would occur. These catastrophes could wipe out organisms from one area, and organisms from another area would come in. This fit his worldview that God created the earth and put all the organisms that we see today on the planet at the same time. The ones that went extinct were killed off, but the ones we see today existed at the same time. Charles Lyell proposed an alternative theory called uniformitarianism. He is considered to be the father of geology and was one of Darwin's mentors and pushed Darwin to publish his ideas. Uniformitarianism is the idea that change happens at a gradual pace, like erosion of soil. The Grand Canyon doesn't form overnight, it forms as things change gradually. So if the natural earth changes gradually, why wouldn't the living things on it change gradually? And last but not least, we have Thomas Malthus, a social theorist who published an essay called An Essay on the Principles of Population. He was looking at how to control population sizes, and what he came up with is the idea that populations overproduce, and so they end up competing for resources. This resource competition was key to Darwin eventually developing his ideas about natural selection. So this brings us to natural selection.